Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's OnBoard limited release training for payers. Please keep your phone lines muted during the presentation. If there's time remaining at the end, we will be taking your questions. Send your questions using the chat box and send it to all panelists. Today, we are joined by project leadership and subject matter experts from various areas of the Workers' Compensation Board. To begin the presentation, I'll turn it over to today's presenter, Dapo from the Board's Public Information Office.
Thank you so very much, Mike. During today's training, we will start with an overview and timeline of OnBoard. Then we'll go over how to access OnBoard and provide a quick review of how a workload administrator assigns prior authorization requests, PARs, in the system. The main part of the webinar is how to navigate the system for a treatment or testing PAR review. The webinar will end with an overview of updates regarding the medical treatment guidelines and showing you the training resources available on the website and what is coming next. OnBoard Limited Release continues its three-phase rollout. The first phase introduced medication PARs and the submission of the request for decision on unpaid medical bills, Form HP 1.0. And the second phase introduced durable medical equipment PARs. There have been thousands of requests navigating the system successfully each day. Lastly, Phase 3 will introduce the remaining PAR submissions for treatment and testing on Monday, May 2nd, 2022. The PAR types for treatment testing will be implemented in Phase 3. OBLR will use the information that healthcare providers enter to determine which type of PAR needs to be submitted. MTG confirmation PARs will be used to request confirmation from the insurer that the procedure or test is based on a correct application of the MTGs, which was previously done using the attending doctor's request for optional prior approval and carriers/employer's response for Form MG1. Please note, prior to the implementation of OBLR, MG1 forms were optional for both the provider and the payer. With the implementation of OBLR, MG1 PARs will continue to be optional for the provider, but if submitted, will be mandatory for the payer. MTG variance PARs will be used to request testing or treatment that varies from the MTGs applicable to the body part or condition being treated, which was previously done using the attending doctor's request for approval of variance and carrier's response, Form MG2. MTG Special Services PARs will be used to request authorization for special services, which was previously done using the attending doctor's request for authorization and carrier's response, Form C4 auth. Please note, this process will mirror the MTG variance PAR process, rather than the non-MTG over $1,000 PAR process. Non-MTG over $1,000 PARs will be used for requests for treatment costing over $1,000 for non-MTG body parts, which was previously done using the attending doctor's request for authorization and carrier's response, Form C4 auth. Non-MTG under or equal to $1,000 PARs, new, will be used for requests for treatment costing $1,000 or less for non-MTG body parts. This PAR type is optional for the healthcare provider, but if submitted by the provider, a response in OBLR from the payer is mandatory. To begin, let's quickly show you how you'll access OnBoard Limited Release through the medical portal. OnBoard Limited Release is accessed through the board's medical portal. If you're not registered for the medical portal, view the medical portal access and administration webpage for payers. In the teal bar at the top of the board's website, locate the Online Services drop-down list on the right. Select the down arrow to display the list of services and select Medical Portal, then select Login. Enter your medical portal ny.gov ID username and password. On the medical portal homepage, you'll notice an OnBoard logo displayed next to the prior authorization request. This link will take you to your onboard dashboard. All prior authorization requests are now done using the prior authorization request PAR link. Before we detail the specific treatment/testing response process, let's review how a workload administrator assigns a PAR. Assigning PARs is done using the same process, regardless of the PAR type. All PARs requiring review will appear on the My Organization's PARs tab for the workload administrator to assign to the requested level of review. The dashboard defaults to sort by due date and unassigned PARs so that it is easy to identify PARs that are due and haven't been assigned for review. The PAR row will be bold for new PARs or if the status of a PAR has changed since the last time you logged in. Check the box next to the PAR you want to assign. You can assign multiple PARs by checking multiple checkboxes, or use the Select All box to select all PARs on that screen for assignment to a reviewer. After selecting the row or rows for the applicable PARs, select the Assign button, which will appear above the table. A pop-up window will appear, which contains a drop-down list of Level 1 or Level 2 users that can be assigned a PAR. Use the drop-down list to select the user, and then select the Assign button. For this example, we will select Jordan and assign the PAR to them for review. Once the PAR is assigned, the Assigned User column will update with the assigned Level 1 or Level 2 reviewer. The Assigned User column now shows Jordan. The PAR will remain in the workload administrator's My Organization's PAR queue as it navigates the PAR process. Because the queue is sorted by unassigned and due date by default, the PAR may no longer be visible on the first page of the workload administrator's My Organization's PARs tab. But if necessary, you can filter to find the PAR that was just assigned. The PAR will now appear in the Level 1 or Level 2 reviewer's prior auth My PARs queue. This example is what Jordan will now see in their dashboard, a new bold PAR that requires the Level 1 review. After a workload administrator assigns the PAR, the workload administrator will not see the PAR responses submitted by the reviewer or resolved PARs. However, if a workload administrator also has a role of Level 1 reviewer, they can assign a PAR to themselves to review as a Level 1 reviewer. The PAR will appear in their own My PARs tab, and they will be able to see all PAR responses they submit and resolutions to those PARs. To reassign a PAR, check the box next to the PAR you want to reassign. After the row is selected, select the Assign button, which will appear above the table. A pop-up window will appear, which contains a list of new assignees to whom the PAR may be reassigned. Select the new reviewer or unassigned. Instead of selecting Jordan, we will select Todd. After reassigning the PAR to a new user, the Assigned User column will update with the new reviewer's name. In this example, it now shows Todd as the reviewer. If the PAR is unassigned, there will be no user in the Assigned User column. Now we'll navigate the process of a payer responding to treatment/testing PARs. On the dashboard, the Prior Auth My PARs tab will update with new prior authorization requests, PARs, that have been assigned to a Level 1 reviewer. The PAR status column indicates the level of review needed. The due date column is the date the payer is required to respond. If the payer does not respond within the designated time frame, an order of the chair may be issued. The first example will use an MTG Special Services PAR. Other PAR categories or specific responses within MTG Special Services will have different questions and/or form fields. The process for each is the same with varying information needed. To respond to a request, select the PAR ID link to open the PAR details page. Review all sections of the PAR details, including the request details and documents uploaded by the healthcare provider. Select the Actions button on the top right of the PAR details page to respond to the request or request additional information from the provider. If more information is needed from the provider in order to respond to the PAR, select Request for Further Information. The due date for the reviewer to respond to a PAR is not extended if there is a request for more information, or if the request for more information never receives a response. Select the Actions button on the top right of the PAR details page and select Request for Further Information. Enter the additional information needed and select Submit. The RFI column in the My PARS queue will show Sent until the provider responds. When the provider responds, the RFI column will update with Received. You can navigate to your correspondence history section within the PAR details page to review the requested information. To view the complete request for further information process, there is a dedicated training page available on the OnBoard web pages. You can view the complete request for further information process on a dedicated training page that's available in the OnBoard section of the board's website. Next, we will review the process of responding to the Special Services PAR as a Level 1 reviewer. To issue a determination on the submitted PAR, select the Actions button at the top right of the PAR details page and select Respond to Request. On the PAR Response page, select the Insurer Response drop-down list and select Grant, Grant in Part, or Deny. The required information varies based on the type of response selected. First, we will show a grant response. The question, is this request granted without prejudice? Defaults to no. A grant without prejudice can only be yes for a Level 1 review if a denial, first report of injury, FROI 04, or subsequent report of injury, SHROI 04, has been filed in the case and the controversy is still pending. You'll need to complete the additional fields regarding the FROI denial/SHROI denial. You can find the FROI denial/SHROI denial date and WCB document ID number in eCase. If the documents are not available in eCase, upload a copy in the supporting documentation portion of the eForm. You may enter additional rationale for granting without prejudice due to the claim being controverted in the rationale for granting without prejudice text field. Next, we'll show the details required if a grant in part is selected in the Insurer Response drop-down list. The question, is this request granted without prejudice? Defaults to no. A grant without prejudice can only be yes for a Level 1 review if a denial, first report of injury, FROI 04, or subsequent report of injury, Shroy 04, has been filed in the case and the controversy is still pending. You will need to complete the additional fields regarding the Froy denial/Shroy denial. You can find the Froy denial/Shroy denial date and WCB document ID number in eCase. If the documents are not available in eCase, upload a copy in the supporting documentation portion of the eForm. The rationale for granting without prejudice text field enables you to enter additional reasons for granting the PAR without prejudice due to the claim being controverted. Continue entering required information regarding why the request is being granted in part. It is encouraged to provide as much detail as possible via the eForm, rather than uploading an attachment. If the PAR is escalated to a Level 2 review, the Level 2 reviewer will not need to download and then re-upload documentation that needs to be submitted with their response, making their job easier. Lastly, let's show the details required when Deny is selected from the Insurer Response drop-down list. After selecting Deny, additional form fields will show. Select the denial category from the drop-down list. The denial categories available for selection are administrative reasons related to claim status, jurisdiction-related reasons, and medical reasons. If you are denying for administrative reasons related to claim status, the form will then have you select the denial reason. Shown here are the drop-down selections to deny for administrative reasons related to claim status. After selecting the denial reason, there is an open text box to enter the rationale for denial. If denying for jurisdiction-related reasons, you will then enter the WCB determination date, WCB document ID number, and lastly, the rationale for denial. If a PAR is denied for administrative reasons at the Level 1 review, it will not automatically escalate for a Level 2 review or be eligible for escalation by the healthcare provider. The decision is final. After selecting Deny, additional form fields will show. Select the denial category from the drop-down list. The denial categories available for selection are administrative reasons related to claim status, jurisdiction-related reasons, and medical reasons. For our example today, we are selecting medical reasons. The options for denial reasons are dependent upon the denial category selected. 1. Select the denial reason. 2. If the denial category is medical reasons, more than one denial reason can be selected. Please note, a Level 1 administrative denial in a controverted case that is filed without an independent medical examination, IME, for specialist consultations, surgical operations, physiotherapeutic or occupational therapy procedures, X-ray examinations, or special diagnostic laboratory tests costing more than $1,000, would result in a waiver of the right to obtain an IME should the case later be established. These procedures can only be denied when there is a conflicting medical opinion by a board-authorized physician. Please note that there is an Other box. If the Other box is selected, an additional box will show, requiring you to enter the other denial reason. After entering the denial reason, you will enter the rationale for denial in the text box. Then you will select Insurer Response Details. After entering the details for the grant in part, or denial claim apportionment information will be entered. The question, is this claim apportioned, defaults to no. If the claim is apportioned, select yes and answer the additional required fields. The claim apportionment information included as the PAR response from one payer applies to all, and the apportionment fields allow the insurer to inform the provider of how to bill properly. Select your title from the title of the reviewer drop-down list. If the appropriate title cannot be found, select Other and enter the appropriate title. Select Supporting Documentation. The last portion of responding is to upload any supporting documentation used as part of your decision. Suggested attachments are items like an IME4 report, a medical narrative, justification for denial or granting in part of the request, and/or the physician reviewer notes. The recommended document format is PDF. Other acceptable formats are text, spreadsheets, and images. Non-PDF files will be converted to PDF. The maximum combined total for all uploaded documents is 30 megabytes. Select Upload to add supporting documentation to the PAR response. Enter the type of document from the Type drop-down list. Enter a description of the document being added. Select the Browse button to locate the file on your computer. This will open a window where you can access the files on your computer. This may look different depending on your type of computer. Locate the file at your saved location and select Open. This will add the document to the bottom of the Upload document pop-up. Confirm the file is the correct file you want to upload. Select Upload. The attachment has now been added to the PAR response. A confirmation will show at the bottom. The upload will show the file name, type selected, and the description entered. You can change your description by selecting the Update Description button under Actions, or you can remove the uploaded file. When ready, select Review and Submit. If you selected Yes to Granted without prejudice for a grant or grant in part and did not complete the fields regarding the FROI denial/SHROI denial, you will be prompted to upload the corresponding required FROI denial and/or SHROI denial forms. Review all of the PAR response details and select Submit. After the submission, a confirmation page will show that the PAR was granted, granted in part, or denied. This confirmation example shows that the Special Services PAR was denied. Also note at the bottom that since the PAR has been denied for medical reasons, there will be no document generated. The PAR will get auto-escalated to a level 2 review. All PAR responses will show on the Submitted eForms tab. Level 1 responses to treatment/testing PARs that are granted in part or denied for medical reasons will be automatically escalated to Level 2 review status. Once a PAR you have responded to receives a final determination due to the PAR not being eligible for escalation, the provider chooses not to escalate the decision, or the board's medical director's office issues a notice of resolution. The PAR will appear on the Resolve tab. Granted PARs will appear in the Resolve tab at the time of submission. Next, we will navigate the Level 2 reviewer responding to the Special Services PAR. After the workload administrator assigns the PAR, the Level 2 reviewer will receive the new PAR in their My PARs tab. The new item will be bold. The PAR status will be L2 requested. Prior to responding to the Level 2 review request, select the PAR ID link. After selecting the PAR ID link, select Request Details at the top. This section will provide you with the overall L1 insurer response. You can also expand the Request Details section to view detailed information, including the Level 1 insurer response details and the Level 2 escalation reason. Within the PAR Details page, a Level 2 reviewer should navigate to the Document section to view documents uploaded by the Level 1 reviewer as part of the Level 1 response. If the Level 2 reviewer bases their decision on the document that the Level 1 reviewer uploaded, the Level 2 reviewer will need to download that document from this document section and re-upload it to their PAR response. This ensures the document is transitioned to eCase as part of the Level 2 response. To respond to the PAR, you will follow the same process as in the Level 1 review. First, select Actions at the top right of the PAR Details page. When responding, you can see the Level 1 response here as well. Under Insurer Response, select Grant, Grant in Part, or Deny. A grant without prejudice can only happen when either a denial, first report of injury, FROI 04, or subsequent report of injury, SHROI 04, has been filed in the case and the controversy is still pending, or the body part or condition has not been accepted with or without liability on a FROI SHROI or established by decision of the board. In order for the PAR to be granted without prejudice, when the body part or condition has not been accepted, the Level 1 reviewer should deny the PAR for medical reasons so that it will automatically escalate to Level 2 review. This grant without prejudice can then be made, as required by the insurer's physician during a Level 2 review to be valid. If the request is granted without prejudice, select Yes. If the reason for granting without prejudice is claim controverted, you will need to complete the additional fields regarding the FROI denial/SHROI denial. You can find the FROI denial/SHROI denial date and WCB document ID number in eCase. If the documents are not available in eCase, upload a copy in the supporting documents portion of the eForm. You may enter additional rationale for granting without prejudice due to the claim being controverted in the rationale for granting without prejudice text field. If the reason for granting without prejudice is body part, condition not accepted or established, enter additional rationale for granting without prejudice in the text field. The question, is this claim apportioned, defaults to no. If the claim is apportioned, select Yes and answer the additional required fields. The claim apportionment information included as the PAR response from one payer applies to all, and the apportionment fields allow the insurer to inform the provider of how to bill properly. Respond to questions regarding Diagnostic Testing Network, DTN, and Preferred Provider Organization, PPO. Select your title from the title of the reviewer drop-down list. If the appropriate title cannot be found, select Other and enter the appropriate title. Select Supporting Documentation. If your response is based on a document uploaded by the Level 1 reviewer, you will need to download the document and upload it as part of your response to ensure that the document will be transitioned to eCase. Open your dashboard in a new tab. Right-click My Dashboard and select Open Link in New Tab, or save your current responses as a draft to finish later. From the Document section of the PAR Details page, select the Actions button at the end of the row containing the document the Level 1 reviewer uploaded as part of their response. Select Download Document. Navigate back to your PAR submission to continue your response. Select Upload to add supporting documentation to the PAR response. The rest of the Level 2 response process is the same as the Level 1 response process. The OnBoard Training webpage contains a full breakdown of all Level 2 responses to review. If the healthcare provider submits multiple PAR items for the patient on the same PAR, these requests will be processed as a group under one PAR ID. Reviewers will follow the same processes outlined in the Level 1 and Level 2 instructions. However, a final determination for the PAR is not reached until all of the requests on the PAR have been determined as final. This walkthrough will provide an example using a durable medical equipment PAR. However, the process of multiple PARs navigating the system is the same. For example, if there are two DME requests submitted on the same PAR, and one DME request is granted and the other DME request is denied for medical reasons at the Insurer Level 1 review, both requests will move to the Insurer Level 2 review and, if escalated by the healthcare provider, to Level 3 review by the board's medical director's office together. After selecting the PAR ID link in your dashboard, you will see multiple items requested under Request Details. Let's go through this process with an example shown here with Request 1 and Request 2 for bilateral larynx. Select Actions on the top right of the PAR Details page and respond to Request. You are able to request further information for PARs that contain multiple items as well. Both items will show for your response individually. As you select and ensure a response from the drop-down list, the required additional fields will appear for each item based on your selection. Here you can see that we have granted the first DME item in this PAR submission and continued answering the required information for this item based on our decision. Here you can see that we have denied the second DME item in this PAR submission and continued answering the required information for this item based on our decision. After continuing to answer the required information for each item, you will reach the review pages, which will show the details entered for each item in the PAR ID. Towards the bottom, you'll see an overall response to PAR portion. This will show as denied due to one of the items within the submission being denied. If all items are granted, the overall response to the PAR will show as granted and will navigate back to the healthcare provider. If one of the items is granted in part for medical reasons, while the rest are granted, the overall response to the PAR will be granted in part and will remain with the insurer for a Level 2 review. After submitting both PARs, you will see a confirmation page for the response. Again, as seen at the top, the overall status of the PAR will be denied due to one of the items being denied. The PAR will now be submitted. The PAR will now be in the Submitted eForms tab. The new eForm name indicates that the overall response to the PAR is a denial. This DME PAR example will continue to Level 2 review because the denial is for a medical reason. The Level 2 reviewer will follow the same process as Level 1, providing a response to each item within the PAR ID during their review. The Level 2 reviewer will provide an ensure response to both DME requests. even though one of the items was granted by the Level 1 reviewer. When all the requests in the single PAR submission receive a final determination, the PAR submission will move to the Resolve tab and to the healthcare provider. Within OnBoard, payers have the option to notify providers that they are requesting an independent medical exam. We will now detail this process. If the payer requires that an independent medical exam, IME, be conducted before it responds to an MTG variance or MTG special services, prior authorization request, PAR, the payer must notify the claimant, claimant's attorney, if applicable, and the requesting healthcare provider within 5 days of the PAR submission date. When the IME requested notification is timely sent to the provider in OnBoard, the time frame for the response will automatically be extended from 15 days to 30 days. To submit the IME requested notification, first select that specific PAR ID link in the dashboard. Then, within the PAR Details page, select the Actions drop-down button on the top right and select IME Requested Notification. A pop-up will appear to submit the notification that an IME has been requested. Review the information regarding updated timeframes and the requirement that the IME4 be submitted within 30 days. Select Submit. At the bottom of your dashboard, a confirmation will appear confirming that the response has been submitted and clarifying the new due date for a payer response. The date in the due date column will be extended by 15 days, allowing 30 days for an IME to be conducted and for you to respond. When an IME request notification is sent, a document will be generated and a link will be added to the Documents section on the PAR Details page. Select the Document ID link to view the full document, which contains all PAR details, including an updated section with the IME notification. If the PAR type is MTG variance or MTG special services, and you have sent an IME requested notification in OnBoard, or the PAR type is a non-MTG under $1,000, an IME scheduling related reasons option will be available in the denial category dropdown for situations where the claimant fails to appear for the IME or initiates a reschedule outside your timeframe to respond to the PAR. The injured worker or their attorney may submit a request for further action to have the denial reviewed by the board, or the provider may submit another request with updated documentation. After the Level 1 or Level 2 reviewer submits a grant in part or denial for any part type except medication, the reviewer can change the response from a grant in part or denial to a grant. Changing the response can only be done for administrative, jurisdiction, or IME-related denials. This can be done by the Level 1 reviewer until the Level 2 reviewer has submitted a response. It can be done by a Level 2 reviewer until the time that the Level 3 Board's Medical Director's Office issues a notice of resolution. A medical denial will not allow a response to be changed. To change the PAR response, go to the Submitted eForms and select the PAR ID link in the eForm Details column. On the PAR Details page, select the Actions button on the top right and select Change Response. Select Grant in the Ensure Response dropdown and answer the additional questions. Answer the claim apportioned question. Upload any new supporting documentation that supports the change in the response. Review the details included in the new response. Select Submit. The confirmation will show that the grant after denial or grant in part has been successfully submitted. In the Submitted eForms tab, the PAR response will be updated under eForm name with grant after denial or grant after grant in part as appropriate. As a reminder, we have various resources and training available for you as the phases of OnBoard Limited Release are rolled out. The board has released training for new and updated New York Medical Treatment Guidelines, MTGs, which will be effective upon the launch of OnBoard Limited Release Phase 3. The list of the medical treatment guidelines that will become effective May 2nd, 2022 are shown here. The new MTG trainings are available to non-medical professionals, designed for claims adjusters, billing specialists, and other administrative staff who regularly deal with the New York Medical Treatment Guidelines, MTGs. Individuals are welcome to take additional courses for more information. Visit the Medical Treatment Guidelines webpage on the board's website for more information. As a reminder, we have various resources and training available for you as the phases of OnBoard Limited Release are rolled out. On the OnBoard web pages, a payer-specific card is available for payers, which includes links to an overview of OnBoard, training, and resources. The resources section will provide you with videos, previous webinar recordings, fact sheets, and contact information. The training portion will provide you with training documents similar to today's webinar. This contains everything you need to use OnBoard Limited Release, including the newly posted treatment/testing instructions for payers. Before concluding the presentation, we encourage you to visit the System Requirements webpage. OnBoard will run on Windows, Mac, and Linux operating systems via a supported web browser. Supported browsers include the latest versions of Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Microsoft Edge, Chromium, or Safari. OnBoard Limited Release is not supported on mobile devices at this time. However, OnBoard will include mobile device capability when the system is fully implemented. Internet Explorer 11 will not be supported for OnBoard use. The System Requirements webpage includes links with instructions to update the browser you are using and is available at wcb.ny.gov/onboard. If you need more information, you can send general OnBoard questions to onboard@wcb.ny.gov. For other questions, contact customer service at 877-632-4996. We will be sending OnBoard related emails through WCB notifications, so make sure to subscribe. Lastly, we encourage you to visit the instructions created at wcb.ny.gov/onboard. These instructions delve into all aspects of OnBoard Limited Release. Thank you again for joining today's webinar. I'll turn it back over to Mike for the question and answer session.
Thank you, Dapo. As a reminder, please send your questions using the chat box and send your questions to all panelists. We'll take a brief moment now to review the questions submitted, and we will be back shortly.
Hi, this is Paula Rausch from the Medical Director's Office. We have a question on whether or not active out-of-state providers have been notified of the PAR process or just in-state providers. We encourage all providers to subscribe to our WCB emails and attend the webinars. We've not specifically reached out to individual providers, but we do encourage anyone who's interested in getting updates on our OBLR process to go to our website and sign up for those notifications.
And this is James Wessel from Claims Operations. Another question related to out-of-state providers is about out-of-state providers who refuse to comply with or use the PAR process. The requirement for prior authorization applies whether the provider is in-state or out-of-state. If it's required for all providers and all patients to obtain the prior authorization. And the only mechanism to obtain that prior authorization is on-board limited release. So out-of-state providers must use the system in scenarios where prior authorization is required. Another question relates to denials of non-MTG over 1,000 PARs. There is a requirement that if you're denying that particular PAR type, there must be contrary medical. Most often that's an independent medical exam, but the requirement is that there be contrary medical. And then a third question is about workload administrators being able to reassign PARs. And workload administrators can reassign PARs to a reviewer, to a user who is assigned as a reviewer for the level that the PAR is at and the type that the PAR is at, whether it's level 1 or level 2. A workload administrator can also be a reviewer, so a workload administrator could be assigned a PAR if they were also a reviewer. But as a reminder, workload admins can see all PARs in the system of the types for which they are a workload admin.
This is Jim. Go ahead, Paul.
There's a question regarding the time frames to respond to requests and whether they've changed from previous forms. The time frame for variance remains the same. It's the 15 or 30, depending on whether you request the IME within the first 5 days of the request. Special services will mirror the variance. So that time frame has changed, 15 or 30.
This is Jim Tachi, the board's medical director, and there is a question. Could the board clarify which PAR types require review by a board authorized provider? Perhaps the best source for folks for this question is the chart that we have on the board website that outlines what the various provider types are permitted to do, generally speaking. But with respect to this particular question, for physicians, chiropractors, podiatrists, psychologists, nurse practitioners, and licensed clinical social workers, those authorized provider types are able to submit PARs that are within their scope of practice, both for pre-authorization and for variances. For physician assistants, similarly, they're able to submit PARs within their scope of practice, both for pre-authorization and for variances, but it has to be under a supervision of a physician. And for our remaining provider types, meaning physical therapists, occupational therapists, and acupuncturists, they can submit PARs within their scope of practice only for pre-authorization and not for variances.
We have a question on how long does it take the provider to respond? How long does the provider have to respond to an RFI? This is an optional process. The carrier can request additional information, and hopefully the provider will respond. However, the timeframes do not change for your response timeframes. So if the provider does not respond or they wait till the last minute to respond, you are still required to provide your determination within the original timeframes.
Hi, my name is Melissa Beyer-Walters from the Medical Director's Office. There's a question asking if doctors are automatically asked to submit medical reports so they are able to be reviewed. Doctors are required to submit supporting medicals for all PARS types. They can do that either by uploading documents or by typing in the statement of medical necessity field.
There is a question about how the payer responds once an IME report has come back, if it's a PAR type where there is an IME report. The process for submitting IME reports to the board and to any other parties of interest in the claim that are supposed to get them has not changed. Those still must be made in the same manner at the same time and is outside of OnBoard limited release. So once the report is available, the payer can respond. They can certainly attach the report to the PAR again, but that's not required because it's already in the case. They could also just reference what's in the case. But the response itself, the filling out the response is really no different whether there was an IME or not. You're still giving your medical rationale and either attaching or referencing whatever documentation supports that rationale. We also have a question about what the payer's options are or what they can do if the treatment or testing being requested is for a site that has not been accepted or established. And the payer has two options. They can either grant the request and indicate that the request is granted without prejudice, which is it's one of the drop-down options when you're granting without prejudice, is because the body part or condition is not accepted or established. Or the carrier can deny or grant in part and provide a rationale for why the treatment or testing is not appropriate for the claim. Both of those actions, which regardless of which one the payer chooses, must be done by the level 2 reviewer. Speaking of the level 2 reviewer, there's a question about denials when burden of proof has not been met. And that is certainly a position that the payer can take, that the provider hasn't met the burden of proof showing that there's been functional improvement or another reason why the treatment is necessary. But again, that's part of the level 2 response, and that would be noted as part of the medical rationale being made by the level 2 reviewer. And then I guess related to the IME, if the reports or other documents being referenced in a response are already available in eCase, they do not have to be attached to the PAR response. They can be, but especially if you're denying at level 1 for an administrative reason, we'll actually give you a spot on the system will give you a spot on the form to give the doc ID and date that the document is related to.
We have a question concerning where you are is actually done on the request. The entire process is kind of a utilization review process. Level 1 reviewers would need to review, and anything not granted is going to go to the level 2 physician reviewer, who can then either approve, deny, or grant in part.
Okay, we have a question asking if you have to complete a level 1 review before it can go to a level 2? And the short answer to that is yes. It must follow the process starting at level 1. And if granted in part or denied, we'll move to level 2. There is another question. Will the portal separate PAR types if they're submitted at the same time? And the answer to that is yes, it will separate them per PAR type. Another question is, can the provider submit multiple PAR items at the same time if they are different PAR types? And yes, you can do that. You can submit however many PAR types you deem necessary. The system will ask you if you have any further requests, and you just hit yes and continue the process.
We have a question about how the board is handling paper submissions and how payers should. The board, beginning on May 2nd when Phase 3 goes live, the board will no longer be scanning paper submissions, whether it's mail, fax, email, into eCase or any of our systems. We will be responding to the payers that submitted them for a period of time, advising them that the form they used is obsolete and their requests need to be made through OnBoard limited release. It would be our expectation that payers also not ignore paper submissions and advise providers of the correct mechanism to request prior authorization.
There's a question asking if a level 1 reviewer can submit a grant in part based on the outcome of an IME. Level 1 reviewers would be able to recommend granting in part based on that IME, but it would still be automatically escalated to a level 2 physician who would need to make that determination and use medical rationale.
We have a question about jurisdiction-related reasons, and there really is only one jurisdiction-related reason, and that's where the payer would indicate they believe that the case is, or the treatment is not related, or is related to a claim that is not within workers' comp jurisdiction. So maybe it's a uniformed police officer, or a federal employee, or a longshoreman, or something else where a claim would not actually be set up in the workers' comp system because there is no jurisdiction for workers' comp. Another question relates to denials of treatment PARs with an IME and hearings. If a non-MTG over $1,000 PAR is denied by the payer, which for medical reasons, which must be done at level 2 with contrary medical, often an IME, the board will automatically schedule a hearing to resolve that denial per the statute. But none of the other denials will automatically lead to a hearing. There's options for escalation other than a hearing that the parties have to select which way they want to address the denial.
Okay, and with that question, we will conclude today's webinar. Thank you all for participating. We hope today's webinar helped prepare you for Phase 3 of OnBoard Limited Release. If you have any questions following the webinar, you can email onboard@wcb.ny.gov with general questions or call 877-632-4996 for other questions. If you have not already, subscribe to receive WCB notifications where we will send all information about OnBoard. Lastly, the new OnBoard webpage contains detailed training information for payers. We encourage you to visit this website to review everything you need to know. At the closing of this webinar, you will be linked to a survey. Your input here is greatly appreciated to help us plan and improve future sessions and update our OnBoard resources. Thank you all again and have a wonderful day.